I remember that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasul al-Kareem. Today's talk is about Muslims in Spain, or Islamic Spain, or Muslim Spain. We call it in Arabic and in English, actually, and European, they call it Al-Andalus. Andalus. Where did they get the name from? From, believe it or not, from the word, the European word, probably Greek, not probably Latin word, vandal. We all know what vandals are. It's not far from it, really. Vandal became Wandal, then Andalus. Vandal were some tribes that came from somewhere from Middle Europe or East Europe, and they raided Spain and they stayed there, and they were called Vandals. That's the name of the tribes, not to do with vandalism, or probably, I don't know. But anyway, starting from Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu time, that in his time, the Muslims started expanding in North Africa and in East and in Central Asia as well. That's starting from Abu Bakr time. But from Umar time, when he sent Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu, and Amr ibn al-As occupied or conquered Egypt, and then after Umar ibn Khattab, during the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, he sent Uqba ibn Nafi', who again went west towards North Africa, and he arrived at Tunisia and built the city of Qayrawan, still till there, and there is a mosque in his name there. And then the Umayyads came after, and they kept on expanding. They sent a great general called Musa ibn Nusayr. Musa ibn Nusayr occupied or conquered all of North Africa. That means what's known now, the rest of Libya, all of Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, right up to the Pacific, not Pacific, Atlantic Ocean. Musa ibn Nasir, he was fighting the Berber of the time, or they called them as well the Amazigh. Somehow this Musa ibn Nasir was different from the other commanders. He managed to convert those people, the Berber, to Islam. And the conversion rate wasn't small rate, it was almost 100%. Everybody entered in Islam. Some were Christians because of the influence of the Romans, because the Roman Empire occupied all of North Africa, but most of them were not Christians, pagans probably. Anyway, from them there was and then he recruited them as well in his army, this Musa ibn Nasir, and amongst one of his generals was a bright young man called Tariq ibn Ziyad. So the Muslims thought of Europe. It was not far away from north of Morocco, only small straits, and then Europe. After some exploration in the year 91 or 92 Hijri, Musa ibn Nasir sent his general, what's his name? Tariq ibn Ziyad. Tariq ibn Ziyad was from the Berber, from the local people there. Sent him with only 8,000 men to attack Spain, the Vandals, the Andalus. And he did, in 92, he did, and defeated their leader called Luzriq, and suddenly the Muslims found themselves in charge or in control of the south of Spain. So Tariq ibn Ziyad start going north now in Spain. We'll come and we'll have a look at the map soon, inshallah. And 2 years after, 2 or 3 years after, Musa ibn Nasir himself took with him a big army and crossed the sea and joined Tariq ibn Ziyad, and they started now venturing into Europe. Tariq ibn Ziyad, because of his name, he is the conqueror of Spain, the first conqueror of Muslims, conqueror of Spain. The Muslim called the mountains there, or the straits, that's Jebel, the mountain there, because at the seaside there was a mountain that you had to climb first before you go to the plains of Spain. Jebel Tariq in Arabic, Jebel Tariq, which in English Gibraltar. That's how that's where the word comes, Gibraltars. Like in London, there is Trafalgar Square. It's nothing to do with our talk today, but it is an Arabic word for At-Taraf al-Aghar. Remind me in a few weeks' time we'll experience Taraf al-Aghar. It's an Arabic word. Taraf al-Aghar is a battle that took place in Egypt, near Alexandria, between the British Navy and Napoleon's Navy. Napoleon wasn't in it, and they destroyed the French Navy, and then the commander of that, the British Navy, was Nelson, but he was killed in the battle, although they won the battle. But so they made for him, you can see Nelson's statue right at the top of Trafalgar Square, right?
Yeah.
Back to Spain. So we moved on about 1,000 years after, but back to Spain. Let's look now at the moving maps of Spain, of Muslim Spain, what happened. Share screen. Timeline, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you can see the map now.
Yes.
Yes. Right, to me, where is it? This 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's the one. Right, so we're starting with this one here. This is the year that Tariq ibn Ziyad, that's the Christian era, 713, 92, 93 Hijri. Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed, this is here, this is a small strait here, that's called Jabal Tariq. Crossed, and within 1 or 2 years, he occupied all this area. Then a year after, 2 years after, Musa ibn Nasir joined him, and they've gone further, right? You could see, this is here on the left here, the left side is Portugal, right? But they occupied it all. We took on, this area here is about 700,000 square kilometers. It's a big area. In 2-3 years that occupied it from all these Christians or what they were there. And this now here, where my cursor is, if you can see it, yes, this is south of France from here. This is southeast of France. Then, a few years after, the year 100 Hijri, 730, Christian era is about 100 Hijri. Who was the Khalifa in the Muslim world? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, if you remember. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz stopped all expansion of the Muslim empire at the time, and he concentrated, if you remember, on converting people and spreading Islam, Arabic language, and knowledge. Except in Spain, he allowed them because they had critical wars and they couldn't stop it. If they stopped it, they would be at disadvantage. Right, so he couldn't stop the war or the advance, the campaign in. He could if he ordered them. He was the Khalifa, but he realized so this is the greatest area that the Muslims has occupied. They went far, not far away from Switzerland. Really, this area where the cursor is Lyon, which is a far east city in France. And not far away from it is the borders of Italy and Switzerland. This is the farthest that the Muslims have gone. But then the Christians realized that the dangers, then the French and other Europeans start pouring armies after armies, and then the Muslims start losing ground because they didn't have enough time, really, somehow, they didn't have big supplies of soldiers like they had in the East. You know, the Hajjaj was sending thousands and thousands. So they start losing now land. Okay. What happened that about this time, 762, which is 136 Hijri. You remember that the Umayyad dynasty came to an end 132 when the Abbasid revolted against them and killed most of them. And actually they killed every single Umayyad they can put their hands on, except one person, a man called Abdulrahman Adah. Abdulrahman was the son of Muawiyah, not the Muawiyah that we know, that died about 800 years before, 670 years before. The son of Muawiyah, the son of Hisham, the son of Abdul Malik. You know, Abdul Malik had 4 sons that they all became Khalifas. Remember the names? Al-Walid, then Sulaiman. Then Sulaiman appointed his cousin Umar ibn Abdul Aziz from 99 to 101 Hijri. Then after Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Yazid, not the first Yazid, Yazid ibn Abdul Malik, and then Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. Hisham ibn Abdul Malik ruled from 106 Hijri till 126. He was the last of the great Umayyad Khalifas. After him, then their sons and their grandsons, they start fighting each other for the next 8 years, or even 6 years only. The Abbasids came and took over. So this young man ran away. He managed to escape. The Abbasid soldiers followed him. They couldn't catch him. He was a good swimmer. He swam in the river. He ran away to North Africa. This grandson of Hisham, the son of Abdul Malik, his mother was a Berber from North Africa. When he arrived North Africa, what's Morocco now, they welcomed him there. They considered him to be their son, right? They welcomed him and they suggested to him he should go and sort out Al-Andalus, because the Christians were making ground there, taking the land that Muslims have just occupied or conquered, and Muslims as well, they were fighting each other there. So Abdulrahman went. This Abdulrahman, I don't know why he called Abdulrahman Adah. He went there to Spain. They recognized him, they accepted him because he was the son of the Khalifa. Right? He was the grandson of a Khalifa. So they appointed him as their leader, not Khalifa, a king. Right? Because later on they made him a Khalifa, but not him, his grandsons. So anyway, Abdulrahman Adah quickly, right, reunited the Muslims here and expanded really, right? He expanded a little bit because Muslims lost quite ground, but now most of Spain, I could see 3/4 of Spain stayed with the Muslims, right? And after him, his son, his grandson came. For the next 200-300 years, the Muslims were there and ruled by the Umayyads till then, like what happens naturally, that if you have weak leaders, if you have dispute, the Spain started now dividing into states. You see different colors here, that's different states, right? Different, but still the green, the dark green one here was ruled by the Umayyads. But those here, so Banu, but that's the children of, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 different states there. Although the Umayyad was the biggest one of them. Then one of the Umayyad leaders was Abdulrahman al-Nasir, a powerful man who by force united all of these except this small area here. But then because he united them, he weakened the Christians. So the Muslims here, those small states, managed to expand again. So the area was, exchanging hands. But because of this, Abdulrahman al-Dakhil, Abdulrahman al-Nasir, by the way, he built a city called Al-Zahra, somewhere here. If we see here, there are few cities. what happened that Muslim leaders were not only fighting. Every Muslim leader would come and would establish a city, a very modern city. So we have cities like Granada, Ishbilia, Kurduba, Tulaytila, Lisbona, Marda, but 7 to 10 cities, all huge cities. And we're talking cities that had a population of between 1 to 2 million people. Modern cities, clean with water and even public bath with hot water, libraries. I mean, they were mad about libraries there. I mean, one of the kings bought 400,000 books for his library. He sent an army of people to buy books from as far as China, India, Constantinia, which is Istanbul today, but was Roman, to Europe, wherever, right? So they were really building a civilization as well as fighting when they had to. And the fighting wasn't all the time, because we're talking about hundreds of years now. But this is the case, that there was the building of a civilized scientific state. And that happened at the same time. Similar project was taking place in the Eastern Muslim Empire, that is in Baghdad. You know, Harun al-Rashid, and then his son Al-Ma'mun, and even his father Al-Mansur, they gave science, libraries, knowledge, a lot of their attention and a lot of their resources. So during that time, so from but this state was not, they did not follow the state of the Abbasids. They were enemies and they didn't fight because of the distance. They were closer, they could. The Abbasids tried to fight them once, they lost, and they say, Alhamdulillah, that Allah made sea between us, so let them enjoy it there. They are too far from us to cause any threat to us. So during that time, I said about the 1,000 in the Christian era, which is about 650 Hijri, they were all the civilization, hundreds of libraries, clean water, clean cities, right? Then after the death of this Abdulrahman Nasser, then Muslims went again into disunity. Look, if you look here, there was just 90% of it is belong to the Umayyads, and then now within 20 years of that, the year 1021, 1021 was the year 400 Hijri, right? We moved on. Look how many states here. Each line here represents a state. So what happened that now every city became a state. Every city had a king. And unfortunately, they used to get help from the Christians to fight each other. Right? So within a few years, some of the statelets united together to form lesser states. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states, 1, 2, 3, 4 states, 5, oh, well, more, a bit more, but there were major states there, right? There's a lot to talk about them. But they were fighting each other, at odds with each other. In North Africa, which was now neither with the Umayyads nor with the Abbasids. North Africa, a movement called Al-Murabitun took over North Africa from west of Libya, that means Algeria and Morocco, and Tunisia, called Al-Murabitun. Very religious people, very pious people, took over the whole of North Africa, and they realized, and then the people in Andalus sent them, contacted them and asked for help, that we are fighting amongst ourselves. If you don't help, we will lose all of Andalus. So the leader of Murabitun, called Yusuf ibn Tashfin, right? He crossed the sea with a big army, united all the Muslim states, and defeated the Christians in few battles. One of them is Az-Zallaqa, killed so many of these Christians there that they were united against him. Look, certainly again, in the year 1111, which is about nearly 520 Hijri, the Muslims were united, and at least they have now half of Spain before that, and then so on united. So this, because of what this Yusuf ibn Tashfin did, really, the Muslims before that, as I said, they were fighting at loggerheads with each other, seeking the help of the Christians. Because of his effort, this Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the Muslims lasted another 400 years in Spain, right? Yusuf ibn Tashfin wasn't interested in ruling the state really, as he just set up a unity between them, and then he left and went back to North Africa. After he died, again, the same problem back, look, started dividing into, I mean, one of the kings, local kings there, before he died, he had 5 children. So he divided the state into 5 states to treat them equally, the fool. So what they did, the first thing they did was that they were fighting each other. Right? And look, now Spain is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The Murabitun in North Africa, again, after 100 years, they lasted 120, 130 years, they became weak. Another, again, good movement called Al-Muwahhidun. Al-Muwahhidun, that means the one who believe in Allah only. They came and took over North Africa. Why? Because at that time, the Shia, the Ismailis, took over North Africa up to Egypt, right? And they started spreading the Shia madhab. This is Muwahhidun. They were strong Sunnis. They kicked out all these Ismailis, and not only that, crossed over, united what remained of Spain, again in one state, and that again extended the Muslim life there for another 100 or 200 years. So really, with these 2 campaigns from North Africa, the Murabitun and Muwahhidun managed to keep the Muslims there for some time. But again, there wasn't something set forever. There was no plan really. Somehow we don't know what went wrong. Again, as soon as the Muwahhidun now became weaker themselves, as Dr. Salim said, the big mistake to us is that the election of leader was a progeny. It wasn't electing the best. That was a problem. So now look, Spain now start getting smaller, and it will never get bigger. Muslim Spain, Andalus getting smaller, look, right, and smaller, and the Christians were uniting and pushing the Muslims, and the Muslims, unfortunately, were just like the Muslim world now, especially the Arab world. Well, and the Arab world, they're all bad. They're just seeking the help of Christians to fight each other. And the Christians were very happy to oblige. They were helping one Muslim to defeat the other, and then after they do, they get rid of the first one who sought help from them. They carried on. Look, now what we left is only 2 or 3 cities, right? As we're talking about 1260. Unfortunately, very sad news is getting smaller. 1307. Now we only have Granada left, right? And in 1490 was just city and few suburbs around it. Granada till 1497 that Granada fell. It was the Khalifa there, Abu Abdullah Saghir. He made agreement with the Christians that they'll give him a safe passage to North Africa. But what happened to the Muslims there? To the Muslims there is something terrible. As soon as these people left, then the Christians started what we call the Inquisition. You must have heard of the Inquisition. We'll come to this in a few minutes time, inshallah. What happened to the Muslims there? The millions of Muslims. We're talking about, I don't know, anything between 2 to 10 million Muslims there, because a lot of them crossed over there because of the Inquisitions, but millions as well were lost. But that time in Spain, that's then 800 years, from 92 Hijri till 897. So nearly just over 800 years. But those years were not only fighting and infighting. There was a lot of developments in science, technology, as well as in architecture. cities, roads. Let's have a look at these Muslims' advances there, what the Muslims have achieved there. Okay. Okay, now the next thing we look at is some of the buildings that the Muslims have left before, right? Let's look at this, for example, there, Qasr al-Hamra, which is one of the wonders of the world. Okay. I mean, this is the type of building that they built more than 1,000 years ago. If you look inside it, that's all, this is engraved on, there was no concrete at the time. So it must be on stones. It was a beautiful city, probably one of the most beautiful cities till now in the world, really. This is not city, this is a palace only called Qasr al-Hamra. Alhambra in English, to call it. Yeah. Okay, so this is the standard of civilization that was there at that time, and we'll come later, inshallah, to talk about now this is the architecture. We'll talk about the science of that, right? What have they achieved there? Okay, that's very interesting. We'll talk about Muslim science now and what Muslims achieved. But let's look at one thing else as well, which is very sad as well, and that is the Mosque of Kurduba, right? Masjid Qurtuba. Because it became a church now. Okay, let me stop share and share again, just a second, and then get it right. Yes. This is Kurduba, not, yeah, this is Kurduba. Yes, yeah. This mosque now, which is now a cathedral in south of Spain. Look how great it is. This is again one of the wonders of the world. Inside it, there were 1,100 pillars, 20 meters high. Again, a unique architecture. It was mixed of Islamic, Jewish, Roman, Greek, but at the end of the day, it became an Islamic style because of the improvement the Muslim did to it. I mean, it was a great mosque that can take, I think, 5,000 people can pray inside it, and they can all hear the Imam at the same time with no speakers or anything. They didn't have speakers, right? And if we claim it back, they will say you are savage, but they did this to Muslims that didn't care about this. Right, finally, we got to look at now what the Muslim did in science and technology, right? Because the Muslim Spain did a lot, and this was the Muslim Spain that spread science into Europe, really. Right, so right, this Dr. Saab on the left here, if you can see here what he's doing, he is measuring the pulses really, right? Okay, that's to start with. Okay, there's some of the doctors, this is from Western media, I got them here, or Western sources. Al-Zahrawi was a doctor who wrote a 30-volume encyclopedia called Al-Tasrif Liman Ijaza Many Aspects and Methods of Medicine. I mean, 30 volumes on medicine. That's Al-Zahrawi, one of the most famous doctors of his time. People used to send from Europe their young people to learn on those universities, on the Muslim universities. Now, there's many of them like this one. This is Al-Zahrawi, right? Again, everybody in the West who knows, who study the Islamic history or civilizations, right, would know about the Muslim doctors, the Muslim medicine, there's our list of Muslim scientists, right? There was hundreds of them. And in Wikipedia, you will find, later on we'll come to it here, there's a list of about more than 100 of Muslim scientists and their contribution to science and technology. I mean, one of them, I think Al-Bayruni, he discovered 100 plants that could be used as remedies to different diseases, right? So I mean, that's what was available at the time. If you look at here, this is some of the surgical instruments they used to do in operations. They even reached to how to do anesthetics at the time. I think this is Al-Bayruni. Now, science-wise, I mean, this is the standard of mathematics. You know, if you look at it, this is a very sophisticated mathematics that they used. Through this mathematics, the knowledge of the circles, the angles, the sines, cosines, and trigonometrical ratios, they managed to. Who was this one? Okay, this one here is Abu al-Wafa. Artistic deception of Muhammad Abu al-Wafa in a Spanish town, one of the leading astronomers. Okay, astronomy. The Muslims learned astronomy from the Greek. The Greek had a simple machine called astrolabe. Astrolabe is a protractor, small protractor that they used, what they called astrolabe. That's where the word astro from astronomy. Astronomy, by the way, is studying of skies from Earth, while astrology is studying Earth from sky. That's a good definition, you know. Astrology is studying Earth. That means the effect, the so-called effects, I don't believe in it, of the astrology. But astronomy is studying. So the Muslims got this hold of this simple machine that the Greek had, right? I'll tell you what it does. This machine is divided into 360 degrees, right? And by rotating it one way, there's many places that you can rotate it, and it wasn't as sophisticated as well, the Greek one. So the Muslim worked on it, and they came up with 40 different types of these astrolabes, and they call it in Arabic astrolabe. This is one of them. And this is made by Muslims, because if you look at it in details, you will find all writings in Arabic there. Through these different type of astrolabes, what the Muslim used them for, 2 or 3 things. The first thing was to study the planets and the sky and astronomy. And they found many mistakes in the Greeks' calculations and the Greeks' knowledge of the sky. Second thing is, through this, they needed it badly to know the direction of Kaaba, of Qibla. That's why if you go throughout the Muslim world now, they didn't have compasses before. They have this sophisticated compass. It's just like GSP. That's why you find from Indonesia to Yemen to everywhere, the Qibla is in the very old mosque is almost right. And believe me, without proper GSP and maps, it's difficult to point out in the land the Qibla. But you go to mosque anywhere in the world and you find them towards Kaaba, right? And we're talking about old mosques that were built hundreds of years. Through this as well, they can tell the beginning of the months for Ramadan and for the Arabic months. How do they do that? This is a multi-GPS at the same time. What they do is, roughly, they look at the stars by, this is moving parts here, the stars that they know from the sky, they know the name of the stars, and they point at the stars. From the same position, they point at other stars, and then other stars. But combining 6, 7 readings with some calculations, they know, oh, this is the beginning, that means the beginning of the month, that's the end of the month, this is the direction of Mecca. So they use this to find their directions, as well as the more informations about space, as well as knowing the beginning of the months. And that helped them a lot as well in crossing the seas. It was this machine that kept them from being lost in the seas when they were sailing. That was machine, as I said, there were 40 different types of that. Right? So the people, the Andalusians, although they had schools of knowledge in the mosque like the Abbasis in the east, but no, what they did separate. They separated the universities, what they call the universities, the schools of knowledge. We're not talking about the children now, we're talking about adults learning in separate buildings adjacent to the mosque. It was in those buildings that the Europeans will start sending down their people to learn. So if you wanted to learn for about 500 or 600 years in Europe, you would send, especially the people from Germany, France, Italy. Those are the people who had friction with the Muslims. Even their story, I haven't verified it, that one of the British kings sent his son as well to Spain. I couldn't verify that. But those who graduate, I should have brought you a photo of this actually. Those who graduate from those universities, they used to put the turban, and believe it or not, the turban that they used, it was a unified turban, looks like a graduate's hat that the graduates in the West use. So that's where it came from. And the robe as well. The robe and the hat, that's where it came from, Spain. Right? But now they got rid of the Muslims by wars. What did they do with the Muslims was the Inquisitions. So they ordered, what happened that Spain and Portugal were always different countries and different languages. But somehow they united in the year 1400 and something, yeah. They united 1480, 90. There was a king called Ferdinand of Spain and a queen called Isabella from Portugal. They united their forces and they finished off all the Muslims there. And then to get rid of the Muslims, they said everybody must convert to Christianity or they will be killed. So Muslims, out of fear, what they did, they said, you know, all those who ran away, others, they were killed. So they said, we are Christian. And they said, well, they could be lying to us. Let them eat pork. The Muslims ate pork. Let them drink wine. They drank wine. No, they're still lying to save their lives. Then they started now the Inquisition. The Inquisition is this what you see here. And there are hundreds more other pictures. Just go on the internet to see where Muslims were inventing machines and technology. They were inventing ways of torturing Muslims and Jews as well. I must give them that as well. And non-Catholics, because these people were Catholics. But mostly the Muslims, for the next 100 years, they killed, burned, mutilated millions of Muslims. We don't know how many, to be honest, but hundreds of thousands at least. That's the sad story of Spain. And probably if it wasn't for the sea between us and them, they would have followed the Muslims to Morocco, etc. Right?